I don't rent to dirty black trash. Get out before I throw you out like the garbage you are." Those ugly words hit like a punch to the gut. It was Sunday morning. Dorothy still had her church clothes on, still holding her Bible close to her heart. Benjamin Davis just stood there. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Here he was, 72 years old, worked 31 hard years at the Atlanta post office, never missed paying his rent, never caused any trouble for nobody. And this white man, young enough to be his son, just called him garbage. Vincent Hartley stepped right in front of them, blocking their way home. This landlord thought he was so high and mighty, so rich, so untouchable. He looked at Benjamin's old Sunday suit and twisted his face up mean. "You think because you've been living here 23 years, you own something." He spit right on the ground, right near Benjamin's good shoes. "This building is for decent people now. Not welfare cases, not charity cases, not black people." Dorothy started crying. Quiet tears, the kind that break your heart. Benjamin reached over and took her hand, held it tight. His wife, his sweet wife who taught Sunday school for years, who never hurt a fly in her whole life. But here's the thing Vincent Hartley didn't know. This old black couple, they had a son. Not born to them, but chosen, adopted, loved like their own blood. And that son? He was a federal judge. Just 1 week before this awful Sunday morning happened, right there in apartment 4B at Ridgewood Terrace Apartments in Atlanta, Georgia, everything was about to change. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under their door like a snake in the night. Benjamin found it when he went to get the morning paper, a crisp white envelope with legal letterhead that made his stomach turn cold. 30 days, he read aloud to Dorothy, who was fixing his coffee the way she had every morning for 43 years of marriage. Failure to maintain sanitary conditions, noise violations, property damage. His voice got quieter with each lie. Breach of lease agreement. Dorothy's hand shook as she set down the coffee pot. "But we haven't done any of those things." Benjamin studied the paper again, looking for some mistake, some way this could be meant for someone else. The apartment number was right. Their names spelled correctly. Vincent Hartley's signature bold and arrogant at the bottom. "I know we haven't, honey. I know." 3 weeks earlier, Vincent had come through with his clipboard and measuring tape, calling it a routine inspection. Nothing routine about the way he moved through their home, touching their things, opening their cabinets, running his finger along surfaces looking for dust that wasn't there. Dorothy had cleaned for 2 days straight before he came, scrubbing until her knees ached. "This refrigerator is too loud," Vincent had said, though it hummed no louder than any refrigerator they'd ever owned. He'd written something on his clipboard. "And this carpet shows excessive wear." The carpet was 23 years old because it was the same carpet that came with the apartment when they moved in. Benjamin had offered to replace it himself, but the lease said no modifications without written permission. Permission that Vincent's father, the previous owner, had always refused to give. "The bathroom faucet drips," Vincent continued, though Benjamin had reported that drip 17 times over the years and never received so much as a phone call back. Now Benjamin understood. Vincent hadn't been conducting an inspection. He'd been building a case. Dorothy sat down heavy in her kitchen chair, the one with the cushion she'd sewn herself in cheerful yellow fabric. What are we going to do? Where would we go? 23 years they'd lived here. 23 years of making this place home, of knowing which floorboard creaked, of watching the seasons change through the same windows. Dorothy had her garden on the small balcony, tomatoes and herbs and the roses that bloomed every spring. Benjamin had his workshop corner in the bedroom where he fixed watches for neighbors, keeping his hands busy in retirement. "We'll fight it," Benjamin said, though he wasn't sure how. "This isn't right, and we'll prove it." But Vincent Hartley was just getting started. The next week brought a notice about pest control treatment. Mandatory evacuation for 48 hours, effective immediately. Benjamin called the number on the notice, got shuffled between 3 different people before someone finally told him the treatment had been scheduled specifically for their unit due to reports of infestation. "What reports?" Benjamin asked. "We don't have any bugs." "The reports are confidential, sir." They spent 2 nights in a cheap motel near the highway, listening to traffic and police sirens, sleeping on thin mattresses that smelled like industrial cleaning solution. Dorothy cried the first night, quiet sobs that she tried to muffle in the stiff pillow. Benjamin held her hand across the narrow space between the twin beds and tried to find words of comfort that felt true. When they returned, their apartment reeked of chemicals. Dorothy's herb garden was dead, every plant brown and withered from whatever they'd sprayed. The exterminator's report, left on their kitchen counter, noted minor evidence of pest activity, but no specifics about what kind of pests or where they'd been found. "They killed my plants," Dorothy whispered, touching the brown leaves of her basil with one finger. Benjamin wanted to rage, wanted to storm downstairs and confront Vincent, demand answers, demand justice. But he'd learned long ago that anger from a black man, especially an old black man in a situation like this, would only make things worse. So he swallowed his fury and called a lawyer instead. The consultation lasted 20 minutes and cost $200 they couldn't afford. The lawyer, a tired-looking woman in a cramped office, listened to their story and shook her head. "Without proof of discriminatory intent, housing court will side with the landlord," she said. "The lease gives him broad authority for inspections and treatments. The eviction notice cites specific violations. You'd need evidence that he's targeting you because of your race." "What kind of evidence?" "Recordings, written communications, witnesses, something that shows a pattern." She leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Davis, I've seen cases like this before. Landlords who want to clear out long-term tenants for renovations, rent increases. They build paper trails that look legitimate on the surface. Unless you can prove bad faith, you don't have much recourse." $200 to be told they were powerless. Benjamin helped Dorothy up from the uncomfortable plastic chair, and they walked home in silence. The harassment escalated. Vincent started showing up unannounced, claiming he needed to check various things: the water pressure, the electrical outlets, the windows. Always with his clipboard, always writing notes, always finding something wrong. He came at dinner time, during Dorothy's afternoon rest, early on Saturday mornings when they were trying to sleep late. "This is harassment," Benjamin said, after the 5th surprise visit in 2 weeks. "This is proper property management," Vincent replied, not looking up from his clipboard. "Maybe if you'd maintained the unit better over the years, I wouldn't need to inspect so frequently." Benjamin bit back his response. They'd maintained that apartment better than most people maintained their own homes. Every wall freshly painted when needed. Every repair requested promptly. Every rent payment on time for 23 years. Vincent knew it, and Vincent didn't care. The other shoe dropped on a Thursday evening. Benjamin was fixing a neighbor's watch, a delicate piece that required steady hands and good light, when the power went out. Just their unit. The hallway lights were still on, other apartments glowing warm through their windows. Benjamin called the utility company from Dorothy's cell phone, spent 40 minutes on hold before reaching a human being. "Your service was disconnected for non-payment, sir." "That's impossible. We're on automatic payment. Have been for years. I'm showing a returned payment last month. Insufficient funds." Benjamin's hands went cold. "Let me check our bank account." Their checking account showed the monthly electric bill payment, same as always, taken out on the same date it had been taken out for the past 3 years. He called the utility company back, spent another hour on hold, got transferred to a supervisor who promised to investigate. "These things can take 5 to 7 business days to resolve," she said. 5 to 7 business days without electricity, without light for Dorothy's evening reading, without power for the refrigerator, the stove, the little fan that helped Benjamin sleep. "This is targeted harassment," Benjamin said to Vincent when he called the rental office the next morning. "You're trying to force us out. I don't control the utility company, Mr. Davis. Maybe you should manage your finances better." But Benjamin could hear the satisfaction in Vincent's voice, the smugness of a man who thought he held all the cards. That weekend, Benjamin made calls. First to his bank, confirming the payment had gone through as scheduled, then to the utility company, filing a formal complaint, then to the city housing authority, though the woman who answered explained their resources were limited, and investigations took months. "You might want to contact a civil rights organization," she suggested. "If this is discriminatory behavior, they have more tools to help." Sate. Benjamin wrote down the phone numbers she gave him, though he wondered what a civil rights organization could do that a lawyer couldn't. What evidence could he provide beyond his word against Vincent's documentation? Monday brought another notice under their door. Carpet cleaning, mandatory, scheduled for that afternoon. Another 48-hour evacuation required due to chemical sensitivities of other residents. Dorothy was in the kitchen when Benjamin read it aloud. She'd been quiet for days, moving through their routines like a ghost of herself. The constant stress, the uncertainty, the feeling of being hunted in their own home. It was wearing her down in ways that worried Benjamin more than any eviction notice. "I can't do another motel," she said quietly. "I can't sleep in strange beds again, listening to strangers through thin walls." "Maybe we could stay with Marie," Benjamin suggested. Their niece lived across town, had a spare room she'd offered before. Marie has her own troubles. Her husband's medical bills, the kids. Dorothy shook her head. "I won't burden family." So they packed overnight bags again, kissed goodbye to their home again, spent their dwindling savings on another cheap room that smelled like despair and broken dreams. This time, when they returned, more than Dorothy's plants were dead. Their apartment had been entered, their belongings shifted and searched. Nothing taken, nothing broken, but the violation was complete. Drawers opened and closed carelessly, closets disturbed, personal papers shuffled through. "They had no right," Dorothy said, her voice hollow. She stood in their bedroom doorway, looking at their bed where someone else had clearly sat. The comforter wrinkled in places she never would have left it. Benjamin called the police. The officer who responded was polite, but unhelpful. Property manager had keys, had legitimate reasons for entry during treatment. No signs of forced entry or theft. Unless they could prove something was stolen or damaged, it wasn't really a crime. But they went through our personal things. The officer shrugged. "He owns the property, sir, within his rights during maintenance activities." Another dead end. Another reminder of how powerless they were against someone with money, connections, and legal authority over their shelter. That night, Dorothy couldn't sleep. Benjamin found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m, sitting at the table with a cup of cold tea, staring at nothing. "Maybe we should just go," she said. "Find somewhere else. Start over." "With what money? At our age?" Benjamin sat down across from her. "This is our home, Dorothy. This is where we built our life together." "What life?" Her voice was bitter, defeated. "What kind of life is this? Always looking over our shoulders, always waiting for the next violation notice, the next inspection, the next humiliation." Benjamin reached for her hand, but she pulled away. For the first time in 43 years of marriage, his wife pulled away from his touch. "I taught Sunday school in this building's community room for 15 years, Dorothy continued. "I know every family here, watched their children grow up. Mrs. Patterson upstairs, she's 91 years old. The Johnsons next door just had their first grandbaby. This is our community, Benjamin. These are our people. Then we fight for it. Fight with what? We're just two old people with Social Security and a savings account that's getting smaller every month. He's rich, he's white, he's young, he has lawyers and property managers and all the power in the world. Dorothy's voice cracked. What do we have? Benjamin wanted to tell her they had each other. They had dignity. They had right on their side. But sitting in their violated home at 3 in the morning, watching his wife of 43 years lose hope, those words felt empty as dust. What they had was 12 days left on their eviction notice, 12 days to find a miracle, or lose everything they'd built together. We have Isaiah, Benjamin said finally. We have our son. Dorothy looked up at him then, eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and despair. Isaiah has his own life, his career. We can't drag him into this mess. But Benjamin was already thinking about the photo on their refrigerator. Isaiah in his judicial robes, gavel in hand, the day he was sworn in as a federal judge. The boy they'd taken in when nobody else wanted him, fostered when he was 12 years old and angry at the world, adopted when he turned 16 and begged them to make it official. The same boy who called every Sunday night without fail, who sent flowers on Dorothy's birthday, who'd bought them their first computer so he could email pictures and stay connected. The man who'd grown up to wear black robes and command respect in the highest courts of the land. Vincent Hartley didn't know about Isaiah. Nobody in the building knew about their son, the judge, because Benjamin and Dorothy weren't the kind to brag or name-drop. They were private people, humble people, who kept their blessings quiet and their troubles to themselves. But 12 days from homelessness, privacy was a luxury they couldn't afford. I'm going to call him, Benjamin said. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded, just once, barely visible in the dim kitchen light. Okay, she whispered. Call our boy. Benjamin's hands trembled as he dialed the number he knew by heart. 3 rings. 4. On the 5th, a familiar voice answered. Dad? Isaiah's voice carried that same warmth it had held for 27 years, since the day a scared 19-year-old boy in a foster home had first called Benjamin father. But now, beneath the warmth, Benjamin heard something else. Authority. Power. The voice of a federal judge who commanded courtrooms and shaped justice with his words. Son, we need you. The silence stretched across the phone line like a held breath. Benjamin could picture Isaiah in his chambers, perhaps reviewing case files, certainly not expecting his elderly father to call on a Tuesday evening with desperation threading through his voice. What's happened? Benjamin closed his eyes. Where to begin? With Vincent Hartley's sneer? With Dorothy's breakdown? With 23 years of home being reduced to 30 days' notice? We're being evicted. Falsely. The landlord. He's... The words stuck. How do you tell your son that the world still sees you as less than human? That dignity means nothing when profit calls? I'm coming home. Isaiah, you don't understand. This man, he's... I'm coming home, Dad. Tonight. The line went dead. Benjamin stared at the phone, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe just the memory of what hope felt like. Dorothy appeared in the kitchen doorway, her silhouette framed by hallway light. What did he say? He's coming. She nodded, but her expression remained distant, as if she were looking at something Benjamin couldn't see, something that frightened her. Will it matter? She whispered. Will any of it matter? Before Benjamin could answer, footsteps echoed in the hallway outside their door. Heavy, deliberate, too late for maintenance, too purposeful for neighbors. The knock came like a gunshot, 3 sharp raps that seemed to shake the walls themselves. Benjamin moved toward the door, but Dorothy caught his arm. Her fingers dug into his sleeve with surprising strength. Don't, she breathed. Please. Another knock. Harder this time. Open up. Building inspection. Vincent Hartley's voice carried through the door like smoke through cracks. Benjamin felt Dorothy's grip tighten, felt her small frame begin to tremble. At 9 o'clock at night, Benjamin called back. Complaints about noise violations, disturbing other tenants. Open the door, or I'll open it myself. Benjamin looked at Dorothy. Her face had gone pale, but her jaw was set in that stubborn line he'd learned to recognize over 43 years of marriage. The same expression she'd worn when she'd insisted they take in Isaiah, when she'd fought the adoption agency's doubts, when she'd stood against a world that said a 19-year-old black boy from foster care wasn't worth saving. We weren't making noise, she said, loud enough for Vincent to hear. We were just talking. Noise is noise, lady. Some of us have standards to maintain. Benjamin unlocked the door, but kept the chain latch engaged. Through the narrow opening, Vincent Hartley's face appeared, twisted with that familiar sneer. Behind him stood two men Benjamin didn't recognize. Large men with vacant expressions and restless hands. What's this about? Benjamin asked. Told you. Noise complaints. Plus. Vincent pulled out a folded paper. New lease violations. Failure to maintain cleanliness standards. Unauthorized modifications to apartment fixtures. Disturbance of other residents' peaceful enjoyment. What unauthorized modifications? Vincent's smile was razor-thin. The deadbolt you added to the bedroom door. Against building policy. Benjamin felt the ground shift beneath him. The deadbolt Dorothy had insisted on after news reports about break-ins in the neighborhood. The one he'd installed 3 years ago with permission from the previous property manager. Permission he'd documented, filed, and forgotten until this moment. I have the paperwork. Not valid under new management. Remove it by Friday, or face immediate eviction for lease violation. One of Vincent's companions stepped forward. His jacket fell open, revealing something metallic clipped to his belt. Not a gun, but close enough to send a message. This is harassment. Dorothy's voice cut through the tension like crystal breaking. She appeared beside Benjamin, her small frame filling the doorway gap. 23 years we've lived here. 23 years without a single complaint. And now, suddenly, we're criminals? Vincent's eyes locked onto hers with predatory focus. Maybe 23 years has been too long. Maybe it's time for turnover. The word hung in the air like a threat. Benjamin understood its weight, its implications. Turnover. Gentrification wrapped in legal language. Profit margins disguised as property management. You can't just... Can't what? Vincent leaned closer to the door crack. Can't enforce lease terms? Can't maintain property standards? Can't ensure quality residence? His voice dropped to a whisper. Can't clean house? Dorothy's hand found Benjamin's arm again. But this time, instead of restraint, he felt something else. Strength. Resolve. 43 years of marriage had taught him to read his wife's signals. And right now, she wasn't asking him to back down. We know our rights, Benjamin said. Vincent laughed. Rights? You want to talk about rights? He gestured to his companions. These gentlemen are licensed security contractors, fully authorized to inspect any unit for safety violations, code compliance, and, his smile widened, potential criminal activity. Criminal activity? Noise disturbances can escalate, especially in certain communities. Sometimes preemptive measures are necessary. Benjamin felt something snap inside him. Not break. Snap. Like a cable under too much tension finally giving way. 72 years of swallowing insults, of turning the other cheek, of maintaining dignity in the face of indignity. All of it coiling into this single moment. Get away from our door. The words came out harder than Benjamin had intended, harder than he'd spoken to anyone in decades. Vincent's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. Threatening behavior now? That's definitely going in the report. Benjamin. Dorothy's voice was steady, calm. But underneath, Benjamin heard something that made his blood run cold. Defeat. Just close the door. He looked at his wife, really looked at her. The woman who'd taught Sunday school for 30 years, who'd raised Isaiah from broken teenager to federal judge, who'd been his anchor through every storm. And he saw what Vincent Hartley had done to her. She was breaking. Not broken, breaking. Like watching a dam develop hairline cracks under relentless pressure. Still holding, but only just. Still fighting, but running out of fight. Benjamin closed the door, turned the deadbolt, leaned against the wood and listened to Vincent's laughter echo down the hallway. "This isn't over," Vincent called out. "Inspection scheduled for tomorrow, 10 a.m. sharp. Be ready." Footsteps receded. Voices faded. Silence returned to apartment 4B like water rushing into a vacuum. Dorothy sat heavily at the kitchen table, her hands folded in her lap. Benjamin watched her shoulders rise and fall with each breath, watched her stare at the newspaper she'd been reading when the world had started falling apart. "He's going to destroy us," she whispered. Benjamin sat beside her, reached for her hand. Her fingers felt cold, fragile, like holding autumn leaves. "Isaiah will be here soon." And then what? Dorothy turned to face him, and Benjamin saw tears tracking down her cheeks. "He's a judge, not a miracle worker. This man owns the building. He has lawyers, security guards, official papers. What can Isaiah do against all that?" Benjamin didn't have an answer. For 72 years, he'd believed in playing by the rules, following proper channels, trusting the system to protect those who protected it. But Vincent Hartley wasn't playing by rules. He was writing new ones. The refrigerator hummed in the corner, its surface still decorated with Isaiah's graduation photo. 26 years old in judicial robes, grinning like the scared kid who'd first called them Mom and Dad. Benjamin remembered that day. Remembered how proud Dorothy had been, how she'd cried during the ceremony, clutching Benjamin's hand as their boy, their impossible, miraculous boy, took his oath. "Do you remember what Isaiah said that day?" Benjamin asked. "After the ceremony?" Dorothy's tears slowed. She followed his gaze to the photograph. "He said, 'Thank you.'" "No. After that, when we were walking to the car." Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly Benjamin almost missed it. "He said he was going to spend his life making sure no family went through what we did. What he did. What we all did." A car door slammed in the parking lot below. Then another. Benjamin moved to the window, parted the curtains, and felt his breath catch. Isaiah stood beside a black sedan, but he wasn't alone. 3 other figures emerged from the vehicle. Men in dark suits with the rigid posture Benjamin recognized from television news. Federal agents. His son had brought the FBI. "Dorothy," Benjamin said, his voice strange even to his own ears. "Come look." She joined him at the window, and together they watched Isaiah gesture toward the building. Watched him point to specific windows, including their own. Watched him hand documents to the agents and receive others in return. "Oh my," Dorothy breathed. Isaiah looked up then, as if sensing their presence. Even from 4 floors up, Benjamin could see his son's expression. Determined, focused, and underneath it all, the same protective fury Benjamin had seen the day 15-year-old Isaiah had confronted a foster brother who'd been stealing Dorothy's grocery money. Isaiah raised his hand in a small wave. Then he pulled out his phone. Benjamin's own phone rang 30 seconds later. "Dad, I need you to listen carefully. Don't leave your apartment tonight. Don't answer the door for anyone except me. And whatever you do, don't sign anything. Do you understand?" "Isaiah, what's—" "I've been investigating housing discrimination cases for 6 months. Vincent Hartley's name came up in 3 different complaints. But it's bigger than just him, Dad. Much bigger. Benjamin felt Dorothy move closer, straining to hear. How much bigger? 14 buildings across Atlanta, all targeting elderly black residents, all using the same tactics: false lease violations, fabricated complaints, intimidation through private security. Private security? The men who came to your door tonight? They're not licensed for anything. They're thugs with fake credentials. And Vincent Hartley is about to learn what happens when you violate federal civil rights laws. Through the window, Benjamin watched the agents spread out across the parking lot, watched them position themselves at building entrances, at fire escapes, at every possible exit. Son, what are you planning? Justice, Dad. We're planning justice. The line went dead. Benjamin stared at the phone, then at Dorothy, then back out the window where his son stood like an avenging angel in a $2,000 suit. He brought the FBI, Benjamin said. Dorothy's laugh came out broken and bright at the same time, like sunlight through storm clouds. Our boy brought the FBI. A new sound echoed through the building. Heavy footsteps in the hallway, but different this time. Organized, official. The kind of footsteps that didn't ask permission. Someone knocked on Vincent Hartley's office door downstairs. Then, when no answer came, the unmistakable sound of a door being forced open. "Vincent Hartley!" A voice boomed through the building's thin walls. "FBI! You're under arrest!" Dorothy gripped Benjamin's arm so tightly he winced. But she was smiling now. Actually smiling. 27 years ago, she whispered. "We saved that boy." The sounds of struggle drifted up from below. Shouting. Something breaking. Vincent Hartley's voice rising in protest and panic. "Tonight," Benjamin whispered back. "He saved us." The apartment door burst open with a violence that shook the walls. Heavy boots thundered across the threshold, followed by the metallic clink of handcuffs and the crisp authority of federal agents taking control. "Vincent Hartley, you're under arrest for violation of federal civil rights statutes, housing discrimination, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." The voice belonged to Special Agent Martinez, whose presence filled the doorway like an immovable force of justice. Vincent's protests echoed up from the stairwell, shrill and desperate. "You can't do this! I own this building! I have rights!" Benjamin moved to the window. Dorothy's trembling hand clutched in his. Below in the parking lot, Vincent Hartley stood pressed against a black SUV, his expensive suit rumpled, his face flushed with indignation and fear. The man who had terrorized them for weeks now looked small, diminished by the federal agents surrounding him. "This is insane!" Vincent's voice cracked as Agent Martinez read him his Miranda rights. "They're lying! They're welfare cases. They don't even pay full rent." Isaiah appeared in the doorway behind them, his federal judge robes replaced by a simple gray suit, but his authority undiminished. His eyes held a satisfaction that went deeper than professional victory. This was personal justice served. "The evidence is overwhelming," Isaiah said quietly, joining his parents at the window. Bank records showing preferential treatment for white tenants, recorded conversations with his property manager discussing racial quotas, falsified maintenance reports targeting black families exclusively. Dorothy wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "All those other families," she whispered. "How many others did he hurt?" 47 documented cases across 6 properties, Isaiah replied. "The FBI has been building this case for 8 months. Your situation was the final piece they needed." Benjamin watched as Vincent was placed in the back seat of the federal vehicle, his face pressed against the window in desperate protest. The man who had called him garbage, who had spit near his shoes, who had tried to destroy everything they had built in this place. He looked pathetic now, stripped of his power and privilege. "Donna Crawford provided the key testimony," Isaiah continued. "She recorded everything, Every discriminatory comment, every fabricated complaint, every order to harass black tenants until they moved out. She's been wearing a wire for the FBI for 2 months. The revelation hit Benjamin like a physical blow. Donna, Vincent's assistant. She grew up in housing projects in Birmingham, Isaiah explained. Lost her grandmother to a slumlord's negligence when she was 12. She took the job to feed her family, but when she saw what Vincent was doing to elderly couples like you, she couldn't stay silent anymore. Dorothy sank into her favorite chair, the one by the window where she read her Bible every morning. The chair Vincent had demanded she remove because it made the apartment look ghetto. Now she would never have to move it again. "What happens to us now?" she asked, her voice small and tired. Isaiah knelt beside her chair, taking her weathered hands in his. "The building has been placed under federal oversight pending sale to a legitimate property management company. Your lease is secure. All the discriminatory rent increases have been voided. And there's more." He reached into his briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. "Civil damages. The federal court has awarded you and the other affected families significant compensation for the harassment, emotional distress, and violation of your civil rights." Benjamin stared at the papers, the numbers swimming before his eyes. More money than they had ever seen. More than his postal service pension had ever promised. But it felt hollow somehow, tainted by the pain it represented. "This won't erase what he put you through," Isaiah said softly, reading his father's expression. "Nothing can, but it ensures he'll never hurt another family the way he hurt you." Outside, the federal convoy pulled away, taking Vincent Hartley to face justice in the federal courthouse, where Isaiah had presided over cases just like this one. The irony was not lost on any of them. Dorothy stood slowly, her legs unsteady after weeks of stress and sleepless nights. She walked to the kitchen, to the refrigerator where Isaiah's graduation photo had hung for 27 years. Her fingers traced the edges of the frame, remembering the day they had watched their foster son become something impossible. A federal judge who would one day save them from the very system that had once failed them both. "I need to call Ruby Henderson," she said suddenly, "and the Washingtons in 3A. They need to know it's over." Benjamin nodded, understanding. The community needed to heal together, to know that the fear was finally gone. The elderly black families who had been targeted, harassed, threatened with eviction, they deserved to sleep peacefully tonight. As Dorothy reached for the phone, Isaiah caught Benjamin's arm. "Dad, there's something else. Something I need you to understand." The seriousness in his son's voice made Benjamin pause. "This case will be national news within hours. Vincent Hartley's family has connections, money, influence. They'll try to spin this, to make him look like the victim. They'll say you were troublemakers, that the complaints were legitimate, that this is reverse discrimination." Benjamin felt his jaw tighten. Even in defeat, even facing federal prison, Vincent's privilege would protect him from the full weight of public shame. "But here's what they don't understand," Isaiah continued, his voice growing stronger. "You documented everything, every late payment notice, every maintenance request, every interaction. You kept records like the federal employee you were, precise and thorough. Your dignity, your professionalism, your character, it's all there in black and white. Literally." He pulled out another folder, this one filled with Benjamin's meticulous documentation from the past 30 days. "This isn't just about housing discrimination anymore. This is about two people who refused to be broken, who maintained their dignity even when someone tried to strip it away. That's the story that matters." Dorothy hung up the phone after speaking with Mrs. Henderson, tears streaming down her face. But these were different tears, cleaner somehow. "Ruby says the whole building is celebrating. Mrs. Washington wants to organize a community dinner. Says we need to reclaim our home. The word hung in the air. Home. This place that Vincent had tried to steal from them, tried to poison with his hatred and greed. It was still theirs. It would always be theirs. Benjamin walked to his easy chair, the one Vincent had called ratty furniture, and demanded to be replaced. He sat down heavily, feeling every one of his 72 years. The adrenaline that had sustained him through 30 days of harassment was finally fading, leaving behind exhaustion and something else, a peace he hadn't felt since this nightmare began. "Son," he said quietly, "I need you to know something. What you did today, what you've become, your mother and I, we never expected this when we took you in. We just saw a boy who needed a family." Isaiah's composed judicial demeanor cracked slightly. "You saw more than that. You saw potential when everyone else saw a problem. You gave me a chance when the system had given up on me. And look what you did with it," Dorothy said, joining them in the living room. "Look how you protected us. Look how you protected all those other families." The apartment fell silent except for the distant sounds of celebration from other units. Laughter, music, voices calling out to neighbors they could finally trust again. The building was healing, one conversation at a time. Isaiah checked his watch. "I need to head back downtown for the arraignment hearing. Vincent will try to make bail, but with the federal charges and the flight risk assessment, he'll likely be held pending trial." "How long?" Benjamin asked. "Federal civil rights violations with conspiracy charges? He's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. The civil penalties alone will bankrupt him. Every property he owns will have to be sold to pay the damages to his victims. Justice. Real justice. Not the kind that gets negotiated away in back rooms or reduced by expensive lawyers, but the kind that comes with federal prison time and a lifetime of consequences." As Isaiah prepared to leave, Dorothy pulled him aside. "That first night we brought you home," she whispered. "You were so angry, so hurt. You kept asking why we wanted you when nobody else did." Isaiah nodded, remembering the scared 15-year-old who had been bounced between foster homes for years. "I told you then that family isn't about blood or biology. It's about showing up when someone needs you most. It's about protecting the people you love." She touched his face gently. "Today, you showed up for us the way we showed up for you all those years ago. That's what family does." The words hit him harder than any gavel, more powerful than any legal precedent. This was why he had studied law, why he had fought his way through law school, why he had accepted the federal appointment. Not for the prestige or power, but for this moment, the ability to protect the people who had saved him. After Isaiah left for the courthouse, Benjamin and Dorothy sat together on their couch, the same couch Vincent had called ghetto furniture, unsuitable for his upscale building. The fabric was worn but clean, the cushions soft from 23 years of family gatherings, Sunday afternoons, quiet conversations about dreams and fears. "It's really over," Dorothy said, not quite a question. "It's over," Benjamin confirmed. "Vincent Hartley will never hurt us again. He'll never hurt any family again." The phone rang, Mrs. Washington from 3A, then the Johnsons from 2C, then Ruby Henderson's daughter calling from 3 states away after her mother shared the news. Word was spreading through the community network that connected black families across the South, the informal but powerful communication system that had always been their protection against injustice. By evening, the building's community room was filled with residents, both old and new, sharing food and stories. Someone had brought a guitar, and Mrs. Henderson's grandson played songs that filled the space with hope instead of fear. Children who had been quiet and subdued for weeks were laughing again, playing in the hallways without worry. Benjamin stood in the doorway, watching Dorothy help serve plates of food to neighbors she had almost lost the chance to know. Vincent's plan to drive them all out had failed. But more than that, It had brought them together in ways they had never been before. "Mr. Davis?" A young voice made him turn. Marcus, the teenager from 1B, whose mother worked double shifts to keep their apartment. "My mom wanted me to thank you." "Thank me for what, son?" "For not giving up, for fighting back. She said if you had just moved out quietly, we all would have been next. Said you saved all of us." The words settled in Benjamin's chest, like a warmth he hadn't expected. He had spent 30 days feeling powerless, feeling like Vincent was dismantling everything he had worked for. But the truth was different. By refusing to be driven out, by maintaining his dignity in the face of hatred, he had protected his entire community. As the evening wound down and neighbors returned to their apartments, Benjamin and Dorothy climbed the stairs to 4B one more time. But tonight, the stairs didn't feel like a mountain. Tonight, they felt like the steps leading home. Dorothy paused at their door, key in hand. "Benjamin, do you think we'll ever feel completely safe again? After everything that happened?" He considered the question carefully. Vincent Hartley was gone, but the system that had allowed him to operate for so long remained. Other landlords in other cities were probably conducting similar campaigns of harassment and discrimination. The fight for fair housing would continue long after their personal battle was won. "I think," he said slowly, "that safety isn't just about the absence of threats. It's about knowing you have the strength to face whatever comes. It's about having people who will stand with you when things get difficult." He thought about Isaiah, rushing across the country to protect them, about Donna Crawford, finding the courage to wear a wire and risk her job to do what was right, about the FBI agents who had treated their case with the seriousness it deserved, about the neighbors who had supported them through the worst weeks of their lives. "Tonight, I feel safer than I have in a long time," he concluded. "Not because the danger is gone, but because I know we're not facing it alone." They entered their apartment, and Dorothy immediately went to the kitchen to put on a kettle for tea. The same evening ritual they had maintained for 23 years, the one Vincent had never been able to take away. Benjamin settled into his chair with the newspaper, but found himself staring at the phone instead. Tomorrow, he would call the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Isaiah was right that Vincent's family would try to control the narrative, but Benjamin had his own story to tell. A story about dignity, about community, about the difference between what was legal and what was right. The tea kettle whistled, and Dorothy brought him his cup. 2 sugars, no cream, the way she had fixed it every evening since they were newlyweds. Some things, the important things, never changed. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, settling beside him. "I'm thinking about that photograph," he said, nodding toward the kitchen. "Isaiah in his graduation robes, remember? You said that day that we had watched our son become someone who could change the world." "I remember. I don't think either of us imagined he would end up changing our world, that the boy we saved would grow up to save us." Dorothy smiled, the first completely peaceful smile he had seen from her in weeks. Maybe that's how it works. Maybe the love we put into the world finds its way back to us when we need it most. Outside their window, Ridgewood Terrace apartments settled into quiet evening rhythms. Lights flickered on in windows where families could finally rest without fear. Children's laughter echoed from playgrounds that had been silent for too long. The building itself seemed to breathe easier, freed from the poison of Vincent Hartley's hatred. In apartment 4B, Benjamin Davis closed his eyes and listened to the sounds of his community healing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the media attention, the legal proceedings, the long process of rebuilding trust. But tonight, for the first time in 30 days, he could sleep peacefully in the home he and Dorothy had built together. The battle was over. Justice had prevailed. And family, the family you're born into and the family you choose, had proven once again to be stronger than hatred, stronger than greed, stronger than the systems designed to tear communities apart. 3 months after Vincent Hartley's arrest, the transformation of Ridgewood Terrace Apartments was complete. The new management company, carefully vetted by Isaiah's legal team, had restored not just the building's infrastructure, but its soul. Fresh paint-covered walls that had witnessed too much pain. New playground equipment replaced rusted swings. The community garden, Dorothy's long-cherished dream, bloomed with vegetables and flowers, tended by neighbors who had learned to trust again. Benjamin stood at his kitchen window, watching children race through sprinklers on the manicured lawn. His weathered hands gripped a coffee mug bearing the Atlanta Post Office logo, a retirement gift that had survived 31 years of faithful service and 30 days of hell. The morning light caught the silver in his hair, highlighting the dignity that Vincent Hartley had tried so desperately to break. "Honey, come see this." Dorothy's voice carried from the living room, gentle and strong in the way that had sustained him through decades of marriage. He found her seated at the small dining table, surrounded by letters, hundreds of them. The postal carrier had delivered 3 bags that morning, continuing a flood that had begun when news outlets picked up their story. Support letters from civil rights organizations, checks from strangers who understood the battle too well, invitations to speak at housing advocacy events across the country. Dorothy held one letter delicately, as if it might dissolve. "This one's from a family in Detroit. They went through something similar last year. They say reading about us gave them courage to fight back." Benjamin settled beside her, his large frame creaking into the chair they'd bought second-hand 20 years ago. His fingers traced the postmark, Michigan, dated just 3 days earlier. "We never asked to be symbols." "No," Dorothy agreed, her brown eyes soft with understanding. "But maybe that's exactly why we needed to be." The apartment door opened with the familiar jingle of Isaiah's keys. Their son appeared in the doorway, still wearing his judicial robes from morning court. At 46, he carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who had clawed his way from foster care to federal judge. But here, in this small apartment, he remained simply their boy. "How did the sentencing hearing go?" Benjamin asked, though Isaiah's expression had already provided the answer. 18 months federal prison, 3 years supervised release, $10 million in civil damages to be distributed among the families he targeted. Isaiah's voice carried the satisfied weight of justice served. His property management company is being dissolved, all assets liquidated. Dorothy's hand found Benjamin's across the table. After 47 years of marriage, they communicated through touch as much as words. "And the other families?" "Mrs. Washington is staying. The Johnsons decided to move closer to their grandchildren, but they got full relocation assistance. Everyone affected is receiving compensation." Isaiah loosened his tie, the formal gesture transitioning him from judge to son. Vincent Hartley will never own rental property again, anywhere in the United States. The weight of those words settled into the room like dust after a storm. For 3 decades, Vincent had terrorized families with impunity, hiding behind wealth and connections that seemed impenetrable. Now he would serve time in the same federal system Isaiah helped oversee, a irony not lost on any of them. Benjamin rose and walked to the refrigerator, his movements deliberate and unhurried. The photograph of Isaiah's law school graduation remained in its place of honor, but it was no longer alone. New pictures had joined it, Dorothy receiving a community service award, Benjamin being honored by the Postal Workers Union, Isaiah speaking at a housing rights conference. The refrigerator had become a gallery of survival and triumph. "There's something else," Isaiah said, his tone shifting to something more personal. He reached into his briefcase and withdrew a thick manila envelope. "The building ownership has been transferred to a community land trust. The residents now have a voice in management decisions. No single person can ever wield that kind of power over your homes again." Dorothy's breath caught. "You mean, you're not just tenants anymore?" Your stakeholders, all of you." Benjamin turned from the refrigerator, his eyes bright with tears he rarely allowed himself to shed. In those words lay the completion of a circle that had begun 60 years ago, when a young black man first learned that dignity was not given. It was claimed, defended, and shared. That evening, the three of them sat on the apartment's small balcony, watching the sun set over Atlanta's sprawling skyline. The city had grown and changed around Ridgewood Terrace, but this small corner had found its footing again. Children's voices carried from the courtyard below, a sound that had been missing for too long. "I keep thinking about that first day," Dorothy said, her voice barely above a whisper. "When he said those things to us, how small I felt." Benjamin reached for her hand. "You were never small, Dorothy. Not for a single moment. I wanted to disappear, to pack our things and leave quietly, the way he expected us to." She looked at her husband with eyes that held decades of shared struggle and shared strength. "What made you fight?" The question hung in the cooling air. Benjamin considered his answer carefully, as he always did. In the distance, an airplane traced a silver line across the darkening sky, carrying strangers toward unknown destinations. He thought of all the times he had chosen patience over anger, dignity over confrontation, hoping that quiet decency would be enough. "I realized something that day," he said finally. "For 31 years, I sorted mail at the post office. Every day, I handled letters that carried people's most important messages. Love letters, job offers, news from family. I took care of other people's connections." He squeezed Dorothy's fingers. "But I forgot to protect my own." Isaiah leaned forward in his chair, recognizing the weight of the moment. "When Vincent called us garbage, when he spit near my shoes." Benjamin's voice strengthened with memory. "I saw 47 years of marriage reduced to nothing in his eyes. I saw your Sunday school teaching, my postal service, our life together, all of it dismissed as worthless." He turned to face his wife fully. "That's when I knew. Some battles you don't fight for yourself. You fight them for everyone who comes after." The sky had deepened to purple by the time they moved back inside. Isaiah gathered his things, preparing for the drive back to his own home across the city. At the door, he paused, looking around the modest apartment that had shaped his understanding of family, justice, and love. "Thank you," he said simply. Benjamin and Dorothy exchanged glances, united in their confusion. "For what?" Dorothy asked. "For showing me that being a judge isn't about the robes or the courtroom. It's about standing up, when standing up matters." Isaiah's voice carried the gravity of someone who had found his true purpose. "Vincent Hartley thought he could destroy you because he couldn't see what you really are. But I've always known." "What's that?" Benjamin asked. "Heroes. Quiet heroes who raised a son and changed a community and proved that dignity is stronger than hatred." Isaiah kissed Dorothy's cheek and gripped Benjamin's shoulder. "You didn't just save your home. You saved mine too." After Isaiah left, Benjamin and Dorothy moved through their evening routine with the comfortable rhythm of a lifetime together. Dorothy prepared her Sunday school lesson at the kitchen table, while Benjamin read the newspaper in his chair by the window. The activities were familiar, but something fundamental had shifted. They had learned that home was not a place that could be taken. It was a choice that could be defended. They had discovered that family extended beyond blood to include every person willing to stand for justice. They had proven that love, when combined with courage, could transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. As Dorothy turned off the lights and they prepared for bed, Benjamin took one last look around their apartment. The walls held the same pictures. The furniture occupied the same spots. The rooms contained the same memories. But the space itself had been redeemed, transformed from a site of trauma into a monument to resilience. In the darkness, Dorothy's voice reached across the years of their marriage. Benjamin? Yes? I'm proud of us. He found her hand beneath the covers, their fingers intertwining with the practiced ease of 5 decades together. So am I, Dorothy. So am I. Outside their window, Ridgewood Terrace apartments settled into peaceful sleep. The building that had once echoed with fear now hummed with contentment. Children dreamed safely in bedrooms their parents could afford. Elderly residents rested without worry about tomorrow's mail. Families gathered around dinner tables in homes that belonged to them in ways deeper than any lease could define. The battle that had begun with hatred had ended with healing. The story that had started with one man's cruelty had concluded with a community's strength. And in apartment 4B, Benjamin and Dorothy Davis slept the deep, satisfied sleep of people who had fought the good fight, who had kept the faith, who had finished the race with their dignity intact, and their family stronger than ever. The transformation was complete. Justice had not merely been served, it had been woven into the very foundation of their lives, ensuring that future generations would inherit not just shelter, but sanctuary, not just apartments, but home.